Anderson Cooper leans forward, his expensive suit creasing as he stares at the man in the gray hoodie. The studio air feels freezing. Eminem isn't looking at the teleprompter. He isn't looking at his publicist standing in the shadows. He is looking straight through the host's carefully curated persona. This was the exact second the most profitable partnership in music history started to crack wide open. The host brings up the controversy, the protests, and the parental advisory stickers, acting like the network hadn't been playing his music videos on a loop for 6 months straight. It was a setup, a trap designed to make the world's biggest rapper look like a small-town bigot for the sake of a ratings spike. But Marshall didn't follow the script. He didn't offer a half-hearted apology or a PR-approved smile. He spoke with a level of honesty that made the executives in the green room want to pull the plug immediately. The truth is, Hollywood is built on a foundation of hypocrisy, where they'll sell you the fire and then blame you for getting burned. They loved the revenue he generated, but they hated the mirror he held up to their own greed. This was the tragic peak of his rise, the moment he became too real for the machine that built him. If you want to stop being a pawn in their narrative games, subscribe to this channel as a commitment to unbrainwashing yourself from the celebrity spin cycle. Follow the money, and you'll see why they turned on him the moment he stopped being profitable to defend. It was all smoke and mirrors until the lights got too bright. Look at the way he grips the arms of the chair. He isn't scared. He's disgusted. The industry tried to frame his honesty as a downfall, but in reality, it was the only thing that kept him alive while the system tried to swallow him whole. They wanted a character, but they got a person who refused to blink. You sitting there right now probably think this was about lyrics or some moral crusade for the youth of America. It wasn't. It never is. This was about a balance sheet that had grown too heavy for the suits to carry without getting their hands dirty. Follow the money back to the year 2000. The Marshall Mathers LP sold 1.7 million copies in its first week alone. Think about that number. That is a small city of people rushing to stores in 7 days. The executives at Interscope weren't crying about the content of the songs while they were buying mansions in Malibu with the commission. They were popping champagne. But then the cameras turned on. The moment Anderson Cooper narrowed his eyes, he wasn't asking a question, he was performing a ritual. The industry creates these monsters because rage sells better than joy, and then they act shocked when the monster doesn't want to live in the cage anymore. Look at Eminem's hands in that footage. He's fidgeting with a ring, his eyes darting around the room like he's looking for the exit. He knew he was being harvested for a segment that would be sliced up into 60-second sound bites for the evening news. The labels wanted the cash, but the networks wanted the scalp. It's a double dip of profit. They sell you the record, then they sell you the outrage. It's the perfect business model until the artist stops playing along. The truth is that Eminem was the most honest person in that building, which is exactly why he was the most dangerous. He didn't have a filter, and in a town built on plastic surgery and scripted answers, a man with no filter is a walking lawsuit. The tension in that studio was thick enough to choke on. You can see the sweat on the foreheads of the production assistants behind the glass. They were waiting for him to explode. They were praying for a meltdown that would generate a decade of replays. But instead, Marshall gave them a cold, hard stare that said he saw right through the makeup and the teleprompters. He was the golden goose that finally realized he was being prepped for Thanksgiving dinner. Now look at the way the industry shifted after this. The labels started looking for the next big thing, but they wanted someone they could control. Someone who would say the right things at the press junkets. They realized that the real Slim Shady was a little too real for the shareholders. This wasn't a downfall because he lost his talent. It was a planned obsolescence because he became a liability to the image of the corporations that were getting rich off his trauma. If you think the music industry cares about your favorite artist's mental health or their message, you are living in a fantasy world. They care about the quarterly earnings. They used Marshall to break the door down, and then they tried to shut it behind him so no one else could see the mess they made. Don't believe the PR spin that says he faded away. He was pushed. He was pushed because he refused to be the mascot for a system that hated everything he represented. The fall wasn't about a lack of hits. It was about a lack of compliance. He stopped being a puppet and started being a person. And in Hollywood, that is the ultimate sin. Watch the way the interview ends. There's no handshake, no warm goodbye. Just a cold transition to a commercial break for laundry detergent and luxury cars. That is the reality of the machine. You are a product until you become a problem. And Marshall Mathers had become a very big, very loud problem that no one knew how to solve without losing millions of dollars. The rise was fueled by the industry's greed, and the fall was orchestrated by their fear. They couldn't break him, so they tried to bury him under a mountain of controversy and manufactured scandals. But the receipts don't lie. The sales stayed high while the respect from the elites vanished. They wanted his audience, but they didn't want him. It's the oldest story in the book. Use the talent, discard the human. You see it every day on your feed. But this was the first time it happened on such a massive global scale. He was the test case for how to destroy a superstar who wouldn't bow down. And if you're still watching this, thinking it's just about a rapper, you're missing the point. It's about how the people in power treat anyone who dares to tell the truth without a script. They'll give you the world, but the moment you try to change it, they'll take everything back and act like they never knew your name. The silence in that room after the final question was the sound of a bridge burning, and Eminem was the one holding the match. He didn't care about the consequences because he already had the one thing they couldn't take away, the ears of the people. No matter how many times the news tried to frame him as the villain, the fans saw the truth. They saw a guy who was being bullied by billionaires in suits. The irony is that the more they tried to suppress him, the more powerful he became. But the cost was his peace of mind. You can see it in his eyes. The weariness, the realization that he was swimming in a shark tank with a stake tied around his neck. This is what it looks like when the system tries to eat its own. Not the headlines. Look at who got paid when he went on hiatus. Look at the artists who were pushed into his spot the moment he stepped away from the mic. It was a vacancy they were desperate to fill with someone who wouldn't bite the hand that fed them. They want people who are happy to be pawns as long as the check clears. Eminem was the last of a dying breed, a man who would rather lose it all than say a lie he didn't believe in. That's the tragedy. Not that he fell, but that he was the only one brave enough to jump. Follow the money, and you'll find the motive every single time. The industry didn't turn on him because he changed. They turned on him because he stayed exactly the same while their needs shifted. He was no longer the profitable rebel. He was the uncontrollable truth-teller. And in a world of mirrors, the truth is the most dangerous thing you can show. Look closely at the final frames of that interview. He's already gone. His mind is already out the door, back in Detroit, far away from the fake smiles and the freezing studios. He won, but at a price that would break most people. He kept his soul, but he lost the game they wanted him to play. And that is the only way to truly beat the system. You don't win by playing. You win by walking away while they're still begging for more. The credits roll, the lights go down, and the suits go back to their offices to find the next victim. But they'll never find another one like him. They broke the mold because they were afraid of what else might come out of it. This is the end of the rise and the beginning of the reality. No more scripts, no more masks, just the raw, uncut truth that the world wasn't ready to hear. Subscribe if you're tired of the curated lies and want the raw facts of how this industry actually works. Because the deeper you go, the darker it gets, and we're just getting started. The industry's final act wasn't a loud explosion. It was a slow, deliberate freeze-out. Those same executives who stood up and cheered when he won his Oscar suddenly couldn't remember his name when the advertisers started calling with complaints. You saw it in the way the award show invites just stopped coming. The red carpet stayed rolled up. The seats at the head of the table were suddenly filled by people who prioritized brand safety over raw talent. It was all smoke and mirrors from the very start. They loved the controversy when it sold records, but ran for cover the moment it threatened their corporate bonuses. You can literally see the change in his eyes during those final public appearances. The spark is replaced by a cold, hard realization that he was surrounded by vultures in expensive suits. They didn't want the art. They wanted the revenue stream. When the stream got turbulent, they built a dam and walked away without looking back. Look at the way they pivot now. Every time a new artist shows a hint of that old-school defiance, the machine crushes it before it can hit the charts. They learned that one Eminem was enough to last a lifetime. Subscribe to leave your mark in this archive of human folly, because history has a nasty habit of repeating itself with every new star that dares to speak up. Today, Eminem exists in a self-imposed exile. He is a king without a court, living in a fortified mansion in Michigan, surrounded by trophies that mean nothing in a world that moved on to more obedient puppets. He still sells out stadiums and moves units, but the cultural conversation happens without him now. The industry pushed him into a corner and left him there to grow old inside.